Hello, Mr. Minix. My name, math is my game, and today what we're going to do is just kind of crack the surface of the TI-Nspire graphing calculator. In this video, we'll attempt to just kind of take a look at how to get up and running on this calculator. So if you're using a handheld, the buttons should be the same as the ones that are going to show up on my screen here. So the first one that you'll need to find is the home button. One thing you'll notice about this calculator is the whole concept of it is very intuitive. In other words, everything makes sense. It's laid out pretty well. The home button's in the upper right corner, and the very first screen that you come to, you'll notice the icon for the home screen. Upper right corner, you can see your battery level indicator. It says the scratch pad, calculate, and graph, and we'll talk about those things in a minute. And then you've got a few items under documents, and then at the bottom you've got all these icons. So the first thing I'd like to get into then is the scratch pad. That's probably the fastest way to get up and running. So you can either move the mouse to and click, or you can actually press the A button on the calculator. Either way, that'll take you right into the scratch pad. Also, if you actually click the scratch pad button, which is in the upper left corner, it's the second button down on the calculator, you can press that also. So here we're at a calculator page of the scratch pad. Again, notice at the top there's two tabs, calculator tab, and if we move our cursor and click over on the other one, that actually takes us to a graph tab. Okay, so in the scratch pad you can do your basic calculations. One thing you'll notice about the Nspire is it likes fractions as much as I do, although it won't take a decimal and make it a fraction until you tell it to, which we could actually do that, 0.125. If we press menu, you'll find that menu is going to do a lot of the things that we want it to. Menu and then number. And as I'm navigating through these screens, when I just pressed escape to get out. When I press menu, I can actually just press the number that corresponds to the command that I want. For instance, if I want algebra, I could press the number 2. And then if I want to convert or approximate to a fraction, again, I could press the number 2. And then I'll press enter, and the calculator does its thing. Okay. So the scratch pad is okay. It's fine for doing calculations. There's a couple things I don't like about it. To my knowledge, the memory in the scratch pad can't be erased, which I wish that it could, but to my memory, it can't be. I guess we could clear history here. Maybe it can be. Maybe I just learned that. Anyway, the scratch pad's kind of limited. It can't do all the features that the calculator can, but it's not a bad place to start. If we click the other tab for graphing, f1 of x, let's just graph a line, x plus 2. Okay, so we can graph a line, we can analyze the graph, and we can do all sorts of things, but I caution the students not to rely on the scratch pad so much because it really limits the calculator's abilities of what it can do. So if we go back home, we'll click the home button. What I'd like to do is start a new document, and the interesting thing about the TI-Nspire is that it's really a computer, and it files as a computer does. So if we just go ahead and add a calculator page, we'll have what seems to be the same commands as we had before. 9 different options once we press menu. If we're back in the scratch pad on a calculator page and we press menu, there's only 8 options. So you'll notice right there's one thing that's different. So I'm going to press the scratch pad button again to go back. Actually, I'll just go home. And here's one place where I used to get lost on this calculator. Students get lost sometimes. If you're at this screen and you already have a document started, you don't need to start over. Just click number 4 or go into current, and that'll take you right back to where you were. So functions and programs, I guess, is the 9th item that a calculator page has that the scratch pad doesn't. Okay, so I don't want to get too much involved in this tutorial, but we will take a look at a couple of things real quick. So suppose you wanted to evaluate a function, something like f of x equals 3x minus 2. Okay, now the calculator doesn't like variables. Okay, but it's not a bad thing to have entered what we just entered on that line. So if we type the word define, and getting used to the keyboard is sometimes cumbersome because it's an ABC keyboard, but if you type the word define, D-E-F-I-N-E, you'll notice while you're typing the word define is italicized, but once you put that E on there, it's not. What that means is the calculator has the ability, it has a command built in that'll let you define something. Okay. Now what we need to do is make a space, and that's the space bar is right next to Z. So we're going to define f of x as 3x minus 2. So I'm going to go up and copy and paste. What I'm going to do is use the directional pad. I'll refer to it as the D pad from here on out, the directional pad, and we'll go up. And once we're on that file, we can do one of two things. We can press enter, and that'll copy and paste simultaneously, or we can click, but we don't have to hold. We'll click Control, and then C for copy. Notice that's just like a computer command. I mentioned this is like a computer. It is. And then when we use the D-pad to get down to that line, we'll hit Control, and then we'll press V, and that will paste. And so now the calculator recognizes a function, f of x as 3x minus 2. So if I needed to evaluate that function and find, let's say, f of 7, I could do that, and the calculator will plug 7 in and give us the answer. Actually, on the pre-assessment that the students will take at the beginning of the year, and then at the semester exam as well, they're going to have to find something like f of 7 minus f of negative 7. Something like that. Okay, so the calculator is capable of doing a lot of great things. If I just click the dock button now, and if you're following along, if you can find the dock button, it's right under home. We'll press that, and what we want to do now is we're going to insert a graph page now. Okay, so from a calculator graph page, not as juxtaposed to a Scratchpad graph page, if I press menu, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 options. Okay, it won't let me do a table just yet, but that's okay because I don't have any functions in here. But I've got 9 options. Now, if I'm in a Scratchpad and I press menu, I've only got 8. So again, you can see the Scratchpad is limited in what it can do. I pressed escape twice to get out of the Scratchpad there. So I've got f1 of x equals. Now, if I wanted to graph that last line, I could just type f of x, and the calculator will recognize that. And that f of x, it was defined as 3x minus 2, so that's what I have graphed here. Now, if you're wondering how I can cycle from one page to the next, it's real simple. We're just going to press Control. Again, you don't have to hold it. And then left, and that'll get you to the last page. If you press Control and then right on the D-pad, that'll get you back to the other page. Okay. If you wanted to add another graph to this graph, we'll press Tab. Tab is the top 6 buttons. It's on the lower left corner of the top 6. I press Tab, and it brings up another command line. So suppose I wanted to graph the quadratic x squared, the quadratic parent function. And I'll press Enter, and you'll notice that we have both of them graphed. Okay. So to show you what the different tabs mean and what that's all about, what I want to do now is click Dock, and we'll go to Insert. And this time we're going to start by inserting a problem. And after we insert a problem, it's going to prompt us for something else again. So again, I went Dock, and remember, you can press the buttons. So Insert, I can press 4. Problem, I can press 1. And I want to go ahead and start up a new graph. Okay. So if I go to Add Graphs, now it asks me what is f1 of x. And you might think, well, back here on this last page, we had already graphed f1 of x. And you're right, we did. And on this page, now it's asking us to graph it again. Well, this is a new problem. So the nice thing about a new problem is it's kind of like a Microsoft Excel sheet in the respect that different things that have been assigned, different definitions don't apply in this problem. If I insert, again, I'll go Dock, Insert, a calculator page. Remember, we had f of x defined. If I type in f of x, well, it's not defined in this problem. Now, if I go back to problem 1, I'm going to press Control and left again. So now I'm in problem 1, and if I go to Dock, Insert, and I insert another calculator page, but this is still problem 1. F of x is still, f of x is actually still recognized. It's bold and it's recognized. If I take f of 3, for instance, it finds 7. It's not going to tell me, maybe I have to recall. I've actually never done this, so I might learn something here. Actions, recall definition. Okay, what's the definition of f? Oh, and there it is. Okay, so it recalled my definition of f. Now, if I go back into this page over here, I can type in f of x, and you notice it's not bold because it's not there. If I go menu, actions, and recall a definition, there aren't anything, there's nothing defined, okay? So you might get a little overwhelmed with having a bunch of sheets and a bunch of problems open. You can always press Control and then up, and that gives you a real nice layout of problem by problem and page by page, okay? So one thing that I'm guilty of, and a lot of students are guilty of, is they don't save what they did. So I'm just gonna go back into problem 1, page 1. And this is really cool. If you press Doc, you'll notice the very first option here is File. And once we press File, we can start a new document, we can open a document, we can close this one, we can save or save as. So you'll notice it's just like a computer filing system. I'm going to go ahead and click Save As. And by default, usually the calculator goes to My Documents. And you can name this. Obviously, you'd want to name it something different than document 1. Maybe, I don't know, trial 1. Okay. So the interesting thing now is that document's saved. So if I go home and I start a new document, and I'm in a graph or in a calculator page or something like that, and I want to bring up that last document, I can go Doc, File, Open Document, and it was in My Documents, and I had called that Trial 1, and if I scroll down, there it is, Trial 1, and I can click on that, and I can open that new file back up, okay, or that old file back up, okay. So that should get you a good start up and running as to the calculator. Real quick, I'll go back home and show you a few of the other variables, or the little icons at the bottom. The calculator icon, we saw what that's about. The graph icon, we saw what that's about. The geometry icon, the geometry page is really interesting. There's a lot of great things you can do here. You can create all kinds of geometric shapes, and you can, once you have those shapes, there's all kinds of great things you can do. You can make constructions, you can sketch triangles and make line segments and find the measurements of line segments, and it's really a great tool for exploring parts of a circle or anything for that matter. I can actually, measure this angle. I just have to tell it, what the 3 reference points are, and it gives me the measure of the angle. And on a live basis, if I drag points around, it changes the measure of the angle. So it's really neat, some of the things you can do in that. Going back home, the list and spreadsheets, here's where the Nspire starts to get away from this scratch pad, and it really starts to get much better than that. Anything you can do in Excel, just about anything you can do with Excel, you can do with this calculator. So I can actually put in labels for X and Y and put in a data set. And what I can do then, and this is where this calculator is just the greatest, Doc, insert the data and statistics page. Okay, I can actually very quickly, and with little effort, make a scatter plot and analyze what type of regression model fits that. Okay, very, very useful tool. So that, what we just saw, is actually on this data and statistics. There's also a note page. So if a student wanted to take notes and store their notes on one of these, if they owned their own, they certainly could. And I've actually got a couple of lessons that I teach from this calculator only. And then finally, the last one is I think it's the Vernier something or other, Vernier Data Quest. And that would be used in a physics application or a physical science type application with the right equipment, which we don't have yet, but we will be working on that. You have to hook up certain additional parts pieces to the calculator. So again, the home button is going to be your friend. If you press option 5 here from the home screen settings, and then you go to document settings, by default the calculator does some weird things, and being able to adjust these is a good idea. So don't necessarily have to know what to put it on right now, but at least know that from the home screen, if you go to settings and document settings, you can change some things in there. Other than that, that should get you up and running to a pretty good start on the calculator. Again, current will take us right back to the last document. Control left, control right. On a calculator page, there's probably one other thing I ought to show you at home. It's very useful, probably one of the most useful things to know. The button next to number 9 has all kinds of math templates, palettes. If you need absolute value or fractions or exponents or square roots, nth roots, powers of e, logarithms, systems of equations in 2 equations, in 3 equations, piecewise functions, two pieces, 3 pieces, matrices, summation notation, product notation, derivative notation, second derivative, just all kind of really good stuff. That's probably about it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, matthew.minnick316@gmail.com or mminnick@jagschools.org. It's been real, it's been fun. I'll see you next time.